What if I told you the biggest financial transformation in American history didn't start with Wall Street, or Silicon Valley, or even the Industrial Revolution? It started with a war. A bloody, chaotic 4-year conflict that didn't just reshape the political map, it completely rewired the way money works in this country. And here's the wildest part. The financial legacy of the Civil War is still sitting in your wallet, still influencing your paycheck, still shaping taxes, business, and the American economy today, more than 160 years later. Yeah, the Civil War wasn't just about battles. It was the single biggest economic reboot the United States ever experienced. Now sit tight, because today I'm breaking down the Civil War like you've never heard it before, not as a history lesson, but as the ultimate story of money. How a broke young nation found a way to fund the most expensive war it had ever seen. How innovation exploded under pressure, and how those decisions built the financial system you and I live in. And trust me, this is more dramatic than anything you learned in school. Imagine the United States in 1860. No IRS, no national currency, no federal banking system. It was basically the financial version of the Wild West. Every bank printed their own money, and traveling from one state to another meant your cash might literally be worthless when you crossed a border. Now picture trying to run a country and then suddenly having to fight a massive war with no standardized way to move money, raise money, or even measure money. It's like trying to build Amazon without electricity. When the Civil War erupted in 1861, the Union government was financially unprepared and deeply confused. But war has a way of forcing innovation, and the financial decisions the Union made to survive ended up creating the entire modern American economy, from the dollar in your pocket to the taxes you pay to the big banks funding startups today. One of the biggest transformations was the creation of the first modern national currency. Before the Civil War, money was a chaotic mess. Imagine if everyone watching this video had their own custom cash, and none of it was guaranteed. But with the war draining resources faster than any government had ever experienced, the Union needed real money fast. So they invented something brand new: paper currency, backed not by gold, but by trust. The famous greenbacks. Think of them as the beta version of the modern US dollar. People didn't trust them at first. Some refused to take them. Others thought they were a scam. But necessity is a powerful motivator, and slowly Americans began using the same money for the first time in history. Little did they know, this was the beginning of the financial unity that powers today's entire US economy, from banks to stock markets to credit cards. Without greenbacks, there would be no Federal Reserve, no standardized money supply, and definitely no "in God we trust." The Civil War didn't just change the country, it created the dollar as we know it. But that wasn't the only financial earthquake happening. To pay for the war, the Union needed more than currency. They needed revenue, and lots of it. War is expensive, especially one where entire states, cities, and rail lines are blowing up. So what did the government do? They did something bold, something controversial, something that would forever change how Americans interact with money. They introduced the first federal income tax. Yep, the IRS you love to hate, its origins are in the Civil War. The government didn't wake up one day and say, let's take a percentage of everyone's paycheck forever. They simply needed cash to survive. But the tax worked so well that when the war ended, lawmakers said, hey, maybe we should keep this. And you know the rest. It became permanent. So the next time you file your taxes, remember, you're participating in a financial legacy that began because the United States quite literally ran out of money. And speaking of running out of money, let's talk about the Confederacy for a second. Their financial system was a slow-motion disaster from day one. No solid banking structure, no international recognition, and no real sources of revenue. They printed mountains of paper money, hoping nobody would notice there wasn't anything backing it. Spoiler alert, people noticed. The Confederate dollar collapsed so badly that by the end of the war, it was worth less than monopoly money. At least you can buy Boardwalk with monopoly money. This economic collapse didn't just end the Confederacy. It proved something huge to the world. If a currency is built on hope instead of structure, it will fail. Today's global markets still operate with that lesson in mind. Now, while all this was happening, something else was reshaping America's financial future: massive industrial growth. War sparks production, and Civil War demand turned northern factories into engines of innovation. Think of the Civil War as the original startup accelerator. Railroads expanded at record speed, steel production grew, telegraph lines connected cities, factories developed assembly line systems. The war forced America to build things faster and smarter, and those factories didn't shut down when the war ended. They became the backbone of the modern U.S. economy. Now, here's where the story gets even more interesting, because guess what? The Civil War is the moment America shifted from an agricultural nation to an industrial superpower. Before the war, most people were farmers. After the war, the future belonged to industry, manufacturing, banking, and urban growth. If you've ever worked a 9-to-5 job, invested in stocks, or lived in a major U.S. city, you're living inside a system built on Civil War economics. But let's zoom in even closer. The war didn't just affect the national economy, it changed personal finance too. Picture yourself as an American living through 1865. Everything around you is different. The money in your pocket looks different, your taxes look different. The economy is suddenly more connected, more industrial, more centralized. Opportunity is shifting, power is shifting, wealth is shifting, and the country is on the verge of entering the Gilded Age, one of the greatest wealth-building eras in American history. But here's the twist. Not everyone got to participate in the wealth explosion. The financial legacy of the Civil War didn't fall evenly. Entire regions of the South were economically destroyed, their railroads torn up, farms burned, and labor structures transformed. Millions of formerly enslaved Americans entered a new world of economic freedom, but without land, capital, or government protections. While northern financiers, industrialists, and business leaders skyrocketed in wealth, people like Andrew Carnegie and John Rockefeller built empires directly on the platform the Civil War created. This uneven financial recovery shaped everything from migration patterns to education to generational wealth. It set the stage for the North becoming the financial powerhouse of the nation, while the South took nearly a century to rebuild. Even today, you can see this legacy in income levels, infrastructure investment, and political landscapes. Now, let's talk about one of the most overlooked economic consequences of the Civil War: federal power. Before the war, states had more control. After the war, the federal government became the central force in American finance. This shift allowed for national banks, interstate commerce regulation, modern tax law, federal investments, and eventually, the Federal Reserve. It's no exaggeration to say, if the Civil War hadn't happened, the U.S. would not have become a global economic superpower. Fast forward to modern times, you're living in a world where the echoes of Civil War finance are everywhere. The dollars you spend, the taxes you pay, the banks you trust, the industries that dominate the economy, even the power structure between federal and state governments. It all traces back to decisions made in crisis, decisions that built the most powerful economic engine on the planet. Now here's where the story comes full circle. The Civil War teaches us something about money that's true even today. Financial systems don't grow from comfort. They grow from pressure, from adversity, from moments where survival forces innovation. Think about the businesses that exploded during the 2008 recession, or the technologies born during the pandemic. The Civil War was the original version of this pattern, the moment the United States was forced to reinvent itself financially. And that brings us to the legacy part, the part that still affects your personal finance journey. The Civil War taught America 3 timeless money truths. First, standardized money creates financial stability. Second, strong financial institutions power economic growth. And third, investing in innovation builds the future. The same principles you use today, saving, investing, building assets, earning interest, paying taxes, were shaped by the greatest financial stress test in American history. The Civil War is more than a chapter in a textbook. It's a story about a country that had to rebuild its financial identity from scratch and succeeded. A story about how economic disaster can become economic transformation. And a reminder that every major financial system we rely on today, from national currency to banking to federal regulation, was born out of crisis. So next time you check your bank balance, swipe your debit card, invest in a stock, or complain about taxes, remember, you're participating in a legacy that began 160 years ago on battlefields that most people only know